Hey, good morning. Welcome to our January Friday Forum. My name is Linda Hall, and we are happy to have a great speaker today on transition services, which is key to the Connect to Community mission. Clearbrook Transition Outreach Specialist, Michelle Schwartz, has provided outreach to students in special education, moving from secondary education to adulthood since 2010. She supports students with intellectual and developmental disabilities with linkage to appropriate funding and program resources to help them lead full and meaningful lives in their communities. Michelle has been a great friend to Connect to Community, first presenting to our group way back in 2015. And she has also presented on the topic of transition services at local, state, and national level conferences for professionals, parents, and self-advocates. Prior to her current position, Michelle spent 18 years at a community agency in Chicago, where she served as director of day and residential services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we're so happy to have her here to kick off 2023 for us. Please help us welcome Michelle Schwartz.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Linda. And it brings me back to a time when we first met, I think at one of our adult day services, and you had this idea in your head. And it has totally come to fruition 10 years later, and it's fantastic. So thank you for having me back. As Linda said, I did present back in 2015, and my presentation is new and refreshed, covers the same topics because transition planning is a lot, and I'm going to go over a lot of information, and it's going to feel overwhelming. But the good news is that since I started doing this, a lot of additional services and resources, including Connect to Community, are now available that weren't available when I started doing this. And I just want to let you know that I'm available after this presentation. If you have questions that I don't answer today, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. Just to let you know a little bit about this position that I do with Transition Outreach, it was initially funded through a grant through the Coleman Foundation back in 2009, although I started in 2010. There was one predecessor before me, but there was a recognized need to increase the education and information to students and their families, and also to school professionals about how to link young adults to the service delivery system in Illinois. So we did a lot of outreach presentations, and I'm happy to say that things have improved dramatically. We still have more improvement to make, but I'm happy to share with you my knowledge, and we will go ahead and go to the next slide. This transition timeline I actually just put together. It's based off of information that I received on a Central Illinois based transition timeline, and I kind of changed it up a little bit and added some resources. It's the attached document that you might have received before or as you registered for today's presentation that kind of goes over this timeline, as well as resources available to help with all of these specific topics in the timeline. And throughout my presentation, I'm going to kind of go over these. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but these are really the topics that transition covers to help an individual get linked to appropriate services and supports. And what I will say is that everybody's path is going to be unique because everybody is unique. There are some things that are going to be the same for individuals in terms of the resources that are available, but how they're utilized and the way to get there is going to be different depending on the specific needs of the individual. So when I first did this presentation, I went back to my initial one, and like I said, I changed it up a little bit. I thought about transition as kind of stepping stones. Just briefly going over these, like really the first thing is to learn about puns. If you're not already familiar with that, I will go over that a little bit, but think about if you're in need of respite services, if you're not already receiving services through the state, thinking about legal and financial considerations, special needs trusts, learning about what an ABLE account is. These are all things to know about that will affect your child and your transition planning in the future. And certainly by age 14 and a half, that's when the official transition planning starts in the school process. So it should be part of the individual education plan. And I threw in the Illinois statewide transition conference because that's available for students, families, professionals to attend yearly. I attended this year. They did offer it hybrid, but there's some technology problems, which was really a disappointment. But to have that hybrid availability is a nice thing when the technology works, right? Thinking about guardianship when your young adult turns 18 and the alternatives to guardianship, what benefits are available to them through Social Security and Medicaid, and then looking at more bigger picture, what are they going to do spending their day working, volunteering, participating in community day services, maybe continuing their education through college, community college, or four-year college, and then what are those resources in the community that they need to access, transportation, and then all those other things that every other adult enjoys in their life. So kind of looks like a stairway, right? Well, I used to put this slide at the end of my presentation. I thought, nope, we're going to move it to the front because I want people to think about this as a process, and you're climbing a mountain, and step by step, there's people there to help you. I hear a lot about this falling off the cliff, and while it's not a perfect world, we are getting better every day, and I want people to picture something positive, not the dreaded falling off of the cliff. So it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see, even though it's gray outside, right? We have to look for the positive. So this slide really is an adaptation of the goal of transition. You can get it off of the Illinois State Board of Education website. But I like this goal that was adapted from the Illinois Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project, because it's really simple. Identify and develop sustainable activities and routines that will move that young adult from his or her 22nd birthday and to help him or her lead a satisfying life. Really applies to every young adult. So to have a seamless transition, it really requires planning in advance to know how their day is going to look like when they exit from school. Will they have volunteer work? Will they have paid work? Will they be attending a day program? Will they be continuing their education? And then all the other things that create a meaningful life. Fitness and health routines, household chores and responsibilities that every adult needs to participate in to the level that they can, maintaining and developing new friendships, participating in their communities, faith and spiritual, maintaining those financial assistance that they have, receiving medical services, and certainly residential supports. So this is the definition of a developmental disability when you talk about who's eligible for these services in the state. So I like to put that up there to make people aware of who we're talking about and what the exact definition is. And this basically describes that a developmental disability is a severe and chronic disability attributed to a mental or physical or a combination of both mental and physical impairment that happens before the age of 22 and is likely to continue indefinitely. So it could be a cognitive disability before the age of 18, but it could also include these other types of disabilities that occur before the age of 22 that impact at least 3 or more of the following major life activities. Those include self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, the capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. So the first step in the process, and that stepping stone, is be familiar with the PUNS list. And PUNS stands for the Prioritization of Urgency of Need for Services, PUNS. And the independent service coordination agencies are the entity that gets people put on the PUNS list to be selected for services in the future. So the ISCs are distributed throughout the state based on a geographic location or segment of the state by county or a series of counties. And it really is the role of the ISC or Independent Service Coordination Agency. They're also referred to as PASS agency because they do pre-admission screening to educate individuals and families about the services that are available in the state. And this just gives you a glimpse of the state of Illinois and how those independent service coordination agencies are spread out throughout the state. Right now, there's 8 agencies that handle admitting people into the PUNS list for the whole state. And you're probably familiar with Community Alternatives Unlimited, who is the ISC for the Northern Cook County and also Lake counties. And their contact information is here. If you have not already contacted them and you think your family member would be appropriate, their contact information is here. And I also put Service Inc.'s information on here in case we have anyone from outside. But they service a lot of counties, as you can see. So when do you need to contact the Independent Service Coordination Agency? You can actually contact them as early as age 3. I think they're actually saying age 2.5, but when early intervention is no longer available at age 3, then they could be eligible for services through the state, but they have to be on the PUNS list in order to receive those services. So you can get on as early as age 3, even if you're not certain that your child is going to need services in the future because you don't know. If you think they might, they could be on planning, just planning for potentially in the future. It certainly doesn't obligate you if you are selected. You would need to update the PUNS list every year, especially if you change your address or your phone number changes or something in your family changes in the family dynamic with the health of the caregiver, or certainly with the individual that they need more supports or something that would change their status potentially on the PUNS list. And definitely you want to contact them if you receive an award letter from the Department of Human Services or a pre-alert letter, which they're doing now, which is great, about 6 months in advance of those PUNS selections. And you can always check your status on the PUNS list, meaning when will you likely be selected off the list? And there's a email address there you can contact if you put your name, address, and the date of birth of the individual, and along with the service coordination agency, they can let you know approximately the date when you'll be selected off the list. I don't think I have it in this presentation, but I think we've got about 15,000 people on the PUNS list. They did a lot of work in culling that list. They do prioritize adults, although this year we had 100 children selected, which is exciting. It's all based on the funding that's available from the state. So they are saying that if you're on the list by age 18 in the seeking services category, that you will be selected within 60 months. And again, that's a huge improvement as to how it used to be. So things do improve over time, but we got to stay in the game. I mentioned respite services. So if you are in need of support and you are not receiving those home-based services or any services from the state, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, respite services may be available to you. And I put Michelle Bosco's name on here. She's a director of our respite services at Clearbrook. There are other respite providers in the state, and you can actually get a list through the Independent Service Coordination Agency, but Michelle's also very linked into that respite world and can provide you with other resources. I do believe that our respite programs right now are full, but we still maintain a waiting list because respite is available for those individuals who are not receiving services that could benefit from having a break from that 24/7 caretaking. So there's 2 ways those services are delivered. One is through a voucher program, which is a reimbursement for having your family member participate in a special recreation program or something out of the house that would give the caretaker a break. Or there's in-home respite support, which is, again, a monthly allotment. It equates to about 10 hours a month for someone to come in and provide that respite while the caregiver gets a break. And then we actually run 2 different group respite programs for adults only. One is located in our choice program in Crystal Lake in McHenry County, and we opened a second program last year in Palatine that's available on Saturdays, 2 Saturdays a month, and Michelle would be a great contact. She said she has openings for those Saturday programs. Someone had asked me about who all these people are, and I thought well, why don't I just Google it and put it up on a slide? Because sometimes it's helpful to have a face with a name. So the Department of Human Services, the secretary is Grace Howe. That's over here, over on the left at the top. And then there are 6 divisions within the Department of Human Services. And the one that I'm speaking about right now is the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Right now, the director is Sarah Myers-Koff-Mueller over there on the left. We're not really talking about the Division of Early Education. The next bolded one is the Division of Family Community Services. Tim Very, he's the picture there in black and white on the right. That's where the Medicaid offices are located, with those family and community resource centers. And then David Albert on the left again, Division of Mental Health. And then on the right down at the lower bottom is Ronnie Patrick. She's the director of rehabilitation services. So those are the agencies that we typically have folks connected to for adult services. So when you get selected off the PUNS list, what does that mean? What can I do with that? How does that help me? So it's important for people to understand what those services are. And basically there are 2 adult waivers for individuals. Getting ahead of myself again, but you can have home-based services for children as well, now that we know that they did select 100 kids this year. But the 2 waivers are the home-based services and then community integrated living arrangements, or CILAs for adults on the right-hand side. So what does home-based services means? It's basically providing that one-on-one support in an individual's home in the community or out in the community to help them access services. It can also pay for a DHS licensed community day service in the community. And the purpose really is to continue to work on and improve independent living skills, to make that person as independent as possible or as functioning community integrated as possible. So working on active treatment, vocational and skills training, supported and competitive employment is available through the waiver. And I also added the supportive housing piece for those individuals who may be able to live independently, but still need support in their home, maybe working on budgeting or making sure they're keeping a clean apartment, or food shopping or meal preparation, any of those types of things for supportive housing that home-based waiver funds can be utilized for. And then on the right-hand side is the residential arrangements, and there's a few different ways that CILA funding can be utilized. Typically, you think of CILA homes as the traditional 24/7 group supervised living arrangements, where there's between 1 and 8 individuals living in a group home in the community. You can also have a host family CILA, which means you have 1 or 2 individuals living or sharing an apartment together or a home with a live-in host that provides that support and supervision. And then family CILA means the individuals living in the family home, and those support services are being provided by an agency that comes out and provides that support services. So with the CILA funding, it also includes the community day services or support for job coaching, job placement. This slide tells you a little bit more about how those home-based services are delivered, that there's a monthly allotment that is tied to the supplemental security income maximum. It's not a check that you receive, but it's services in the amount of what that maximum Social Security is. For children, it's 2 times that amount, and for adults, it's 3 times that amount. And then you can use that allotment to be reimbursed for services that are provided. So that one-on-one support, or attending community day service, or it could be job coaching, any of those services that we talked about. And typically there are 2 different types of models to provide that home-based services. You can either self-direct and handle all of the the billing and the reimbursement and all that on your own. You can work with an agency to help you with that. And you can choose which is going to be the most appropriate model when you decide to, when you get selected from the PUNS list, and you can work with the Independent Service Coordination Agency about that. The other thing that's available through the home-based funding is they call it one-time funding, but it's a $15,000 amount of money that's able to be used over 5 years for assistive technology and also home and vehicle modification. So that's another nice benefit of the home-based program. I just put this slide up here to tell you a little bit about home-based services, and just to let you know also that Clearbrook is the largest provider of home-based services in Illinois. We serve over 1,000 families, and we are in 16 counties, so we're kind of widespread. I think I probably went over all of this information already, but there is a link if you want to know those providers in the state. You can go to the Department of Human Services website, and you can find out who those providers are in your state if you're interested in the CILA funding. And this slide just gives you an idea about CILA homes, that they're typical homes that you would see in the community. These are some of Clearbrook's homes featured here, and we do have over 50 homes in the North and Northwest Chicagoland area. This slide here talks about the Department of Rehabilitation Services. Again, that's another division in DHS, and their chief goal is to help individuals obtain employment in the community. So for individuals who have a disability, they really want to focus on job development, job placement, and providing that job coaching assistance. So individuals who receive that home-based funding, they need to exhaust any services that might be available through the Department of Rehabilitation Services first before they access the home-based funding. So I put the slide up there for people to know, as well as the in-home services and supports that DRS provides. That it sounds similar to the home-based funding, but it is a separate waiver. You either have the home-based funding through the DD side or through DRS. You can't have both. The in-home services through DRS focuses more on individuals who have higher medical needs. There's a determination of need or DON score that needs to be filled out to be eligible. And those services are really just provided in the home. It's not meant to access the community. This tells you a little bit more about supportive housing, if that's the direction that your young adult might be going towards. There's been some development in that area in terms of providing affordable housing as well as supportive housing, and there's a few links on here if you need more information. I do another presentation that includes more information about this, but I'm just briefly going to touch upon it. And then the option that's not a part of CILA, it's not a Medicaid waiver program. This is funded through the Department of Mental Health. That is an intermediate care facility for individuals with developmental disabilities, or ICFDD. So those residential facilities tend to be larger. They are 16 as the smallest, up to 100 or more individuals living in a congregate setting. So you don't have to be selected from the PUNS list to choose the residential option of an ICFDD. Just if there's a vacancy and you are a good fit for that residential vacancy, then you can move right in if that's an appropriate setting. Just to let you know about Clearbrook's ICFDDs, we do have one large congregate setting that serves about 86 individuals. Most individuals in that setting do have a roommate, so there's a shared bedroom. We also have 3 intermediate care facilities that are 16-bed, one that's all male and everyone has their own bedroom, one that's all female and everyone has their own bedroom there. And then we have a co-ed ICF that people have their own bedroom also. That's up in Gurnee. And then the other supports and services that may not be funded through the Department of Human Services are just private day services, some special recreation programs, and those you need to make sure if you're going to participate in a program to find out whether or not they by DHS to know whether that home-based funding would be able to be used to pay for the program. So the link up there is just the licensed program. So people want to know what they should do while they're waiting to be selected from the PUNS list. So I put together some things that you can be thinking about or working on. And one thing we already talked about is considering respite services and contacting the respite director at Clearbrook, or like I said, you can also ask your ISC for referrals for respite services. But also start thinking about those future planning needs, what a special needs trust is, whether or not guardianship's appropriate. And I'm going to have a slide that talks about that a little bit more too. If the individual is not already eligible for supplemental security income, they may be eligible at age 18. So that's something to plan for. And then Medicaid, if they're not already receiving those waiver services, they might be able to apply for Medicaid at age 19 if they are receiving that SSI. To have Medicaid in place is helpful because then you can access those Medicaid waiver services more quickly. I'm going to talk about the ABLE account and whether or not that's appropriate, and just beginning to explore what's available in your community in terms of day and residential providers, finding out when you're going to be selected from the PUNS list. And then the last note there is just planning a schedule of activities, including those activities of daily living, employment, volunteering, exercise, fitness, social leisure, and rec activities. So I mentioned the special needs trust a couple of times, and the reason that's important is to be eligible for the supplemental security income for an individual with a disability. You are limited by the amount of money that you can have in your name or your assets. So you can't have more than $2,000. That limit hasn't changed in, I don't know how many years, maybe 20 years, which is a very small amount. So there has been legislation, thankfully, to be able to protect some assets for an individual with a disability so that they are able to save money that's not going to jeopardize these public benefits. So the Special Needs Trust is one way to do that. It does require working with an attorney to make sure the funds are set up appropriately. If they have money in their name already, it could still be set up in a first party or a payback trust, but it would protect them from not being disqualified from receiving those Social Security benefits. So that's definitely something to think about before your child turns 18. And then this slide just tells you about three kind of things to be thinking about at age 18. We've already talked about guardianship or alternatives to that. And that's something that doesn't have to necessarily happen at 18, but certainly at 18 is when your young adult is going to reach the age of majority. And unless you go to court to obtain guardianship, they are their own legal guardian. And the second thing, like I said, at age 18, they might be eligible for supplemental security income based on their own income and resource information. And then the last thing is that Medicaid piece. Just checking my time here. I know it's a lot. So thinking about guardianship, there's a lot of questions that go into whether or not guardianship is appropriate. And for some individuals, that may be an easier choice. For others, it's maybe not be so clear. There are some other alternatives to guardianship. Certainly, while the individual is in school, they can delegate their educational decisions to another adult, a parent, or someone that they trust to help them make their educational decisions. There's also supported decision-making, which I put a link to the website there that was recently enacted for the state of Illinois. Many states have already been working within the supported decision-making, but it's allowing an individual to have someone that they appoint to help them make decisions. The representative payee is specific to Social Security, meaning that if that person is receiving financial resources through Social Security, there could be an appointed representative to help them manage that money. And then powers of attorney are also an alternative to full guardianship, or you could also have limited guardianship. So I threw on a couple more links there for more information, but that's more than I can go to in the scope of this presentation. I do have this slide on here though too that gives you a little bit of an idea about what that process is. It is a legal proceeding, so you can either work with an attorney to file the paperwork, or you can do it on your own. The documents that are required are on the website of the Circuit Court for Cook County. You can go to the Circuit Court website or whatever county you live in. It's all within the Circuit Court in the probate division, but it does require having a physician complete a report stating the need for guardianship, and then filing that along with the petition. In the last few years, they've been doing guardianship petitions all electronically. So either you file it, set up an account on your own computer, you can go down to the Circuit Court and they can e-file it for you. And then the young adult would have to be served a summons in advance of the hearing, and then you attend the court hearing and the judge would make a decision, typically based on the physician's report. There are fees associated for filing. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's about $360 for the guardianship petition. And there's some other resources on this slide as well. The ABLE account, as I said, there have been legislation enacted to assist individuals and able to save money for their future that's not going to disqualify them from Social Security or Medicaid benefits. So again, the ABLE accounts in Illinois were enacted in 2014, but other states have ABLE accounts, and you could have an ABLE account in another state. It wouldn't have to be Illinois. And you can actually go to the ablenrc.org website and you can compare up to 3 different states' ABLE accounts to see which one you would prefer, just in terms of the money management options that are available. It is a money market, and so there are fees associated with them. They're about $60 a year, and there are some limitations to the ABLE accounts that you can put in a maximum of $16,000 per year and up to $100,000 without affecting your benefits eligibility. So I put the link there for more information on the ABLE accounts as well. People ask, what can you use that money that's in an ABLE account for? And it's for qualified disability expenses. And I just have a list of what those have been described to be. It's pretty broad, and they are supposed to be anything that would improve the quality of life for that individual with a disability. So you can see it covers a lot of areas. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Supplemental Security Income Program. Children may be eligible depending on the household income, but if you're not eligible as a child, you could be eligible at age 18, like I said, for a financial benefit based on your disability. And the way Social Security defines disability is not by a diagnosis or an IQ score. It's really based on how that disability impacts the individual's ability to work and earn what Social Security considers substantial gainful activity. So the substantial gainful activity for 2023 is earning $1,470 a month. So the idea is that Social Security wants to encourage people to work to their potential, and they will allow you to work. It may adjust how much you receive in benefits based on what you're receiving. But if you're earning that $1,470 a month, they're going to say that you don't meet the definition of having a disability. The other program available through Social Security is the Social Security Disability Insurance. And there's two ways that you can earn this benefit. One is based on an individual's work record. Like, I'm paying my Social Security taxes. So if I would become disabled and I'm no longer able to maintain my employment due to the disability, I could apply for Social Security disability based on my own work record. I've paid into Social Security over 10 years, which is 40 quarters, which is the typical requirement for adult. Or an individual with a disability may be eligible for their parents' Social Security based on when that parent either retires, or should the parent become disabled and unable to work and is receiving Social Security disability, or upon the death of a parent. So they may be eligible for survivors benefits through SSDI. The reason that I mentioned the SSDI portion along with the SSI is it's important for people to know that in their child's future, if they are working and earning work credits, they may be eligible for the SSDI based on their own, or as I said, a parent. But after 24 months, if they're receiving the SSDI, whether it's from their own work record or from a parent's, they will also be eligible for Medicare. So Medicare is typically for individuals who are 65 years and older, but it also is available for individuals who are receiving SSDI for 24 months. This slide just talks about the things that are needed to apply for SSI. A lot of identifying information, but the most important thing that I share with families, particularly when they're still in the school system, is those IEPs, the 3-year eligibility reviews that include assessments through cognitive testing or psychological evaluations that include the adaptive functioning that speaks about how the disability impacts employment, as well as those speech assessments, OT, PT. They are all really good evaluations that can be used for Social Security application that really documents how the disability impacts employment. This is just a brief slide about how to apply. You can go to their website. I think you can apply partially online, or at least to get an appointment scheduled, because everyone will need a in-person interview. But the last few times that I've tried online, there have been glitches, so it really just depends. But you can also fill out a paper copy of the application and call Social Security for an interview, and then send that application in along with the documentation. For adult Medicaid, as I said, Medicaid is required if you're going to receive those home-based services, either as a child or an adult. And for children, you can receive Medicaid up until you turn 19. So they kind of give you that 18th year, which I think is kind of nice, because if you're not receiving Medicaid and you're going through the application process for SSI at 18, it really gives you that whole year until you need to apply for that adult Medicaid. And I will say it's easier to be approved for adult Medicaid if you already have SSI in place. Medicaid can be a secondary insurance if someone is already covered through a parent's private insurance. But again, it's easier if you have private insurance to have Medicaid approved if you're already approved for SSI. This says you can apply online, in person, or by the mail. I definitely recommend applying online. It really is the most efficient. And I can help with those Medicaid applications as well as the Social Security. So this is just a list of identification that's needed to apply for Medicaid. These documents can actually be scanned and uploaded to the application online, or you can mail them in. And again, the DHS website will take you directly to the ABE website below, but I put that DHS website on there because there's a lot of helpful information about Medicaid and how to apply for it if you're doing it on your own, but I'm also available to help people navigate that. And also, if you are receiving Medicaid and you moved since the pandemic started in March of 2020, make sure that you let Medicaid know of your new address, because they will be sending out notices to renew your Medicaid. They haven't been doing that for the last few years because of the pandemic. Everyone continued to be covered by Medicaid, but I believe they are lifting that public health emergency as of April 1. And so it will be really important for people to receive those notifications to renew their Medicaid. So if you changed your address, you want to make sure that Medicaid is aware so that you can receive that notice when it's time to update your information. So really, this is the crux of everything that we're talking about for planning your young adult's future, and what's their day going to be like when they're not in school Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, where you know where they are. So you need to start thinking about what are they doing in their day that you can put on their schedule, on their calendar, that's going to be meaningful. So not only those activities that they can help at home, you know, those household tasks, whether it's helping with the laundry or setting the table or unloading the dishwasher or putting out the garbage or collecting recycles or, you know, stripping the beds of the laundry or putting the towels in, whatever it is at home that they can do, helping make grocery lists, putting the groceries away. Those are things that they should be incorporating into daily and weekly schedule, because that's not going to go away when they exit school, and they can be contributing to their household. But also, what else are they going to be doing in terms of either work or volunteering or participating in a day program, and then scheduling in those fitness, health, social rec, and leisure activities. And the other important piece is transportation. And since the school bus is not going to be providing door-to-door transportation anymore, you need to figure out what is going to be a reliable way to transport in the community. So there are services through the PACE door-to-door or RTA. It does require an application. Looks like I have a typo in this slide. So there's a little bit of process involved in getting approved for the ADA parent, but you can also check if your village or township offers the dial-a-ride or other transportation resources. And I touched on this already, but continuing those recreation and leisure activities that the individual enjoys or they find meaningful. Special Olympics can continue, special rec programs can continue into adulthood, or your local Y or health center. Those are great things to take advantage of and to make connections with friends and other individuals in those places. So in thinking about planning for transition, the idea really is to develop an awareness of your community and beyond with your friends, your family, neighbors, and local businesses. by attending informational seminars like this and attending resource fairs if your school offers them. Those are great ways to learn about what resources are available. I recommend starting early because, as you can see, there's a lot to do, and you probably need to attend more than one informational or resource fair. And those resources change over time. Some go away, some new ones are added. So it's helpful to attend, yearly if you can, to see what's going on in the community. One thing that I suggest at those IEP meetings is really identifying the strengths that your young adult has, what their interests are, and how we can help support those interests in a meaningful life and in their community after they exit school. And also identifying what are those barriers that prevent them from accessing the community, and how can we focus on those things to improve them while they're still in school, to help them be as independent as possible. I already touched on number 4, all of those things. And then emphasizing daily living skills and choice making at home. These are going to help improve their skills and independence and promote their just self-concept and confidence. So those are things that you can do while you're waiting to be selected off the PUNS list. And then we also mentioned finding out what those resources are in your area and to visit them if possible. I know it was hard through the last few years during the pandemic because we weren't providing a lot of in-person tours, but there are websites and tours online that you can see, but at least becoming familiar with where those resources are, and then using your own family network and prospective employers in the community where you live that might be resources for your young adult to either have a volunteer experience or employment experience. And last but not least, on your list of things, really important to stay informed of what's going on at the state legislation level, because the services that are available in the state that are paid for through the Medicaid waiver are really because of a lot of advocacy over many, many years. And those services can only increase when the legislators allocate more funding and resources. So I suggest, if you're not already, link to a organization that provides you with those updates, and perhaps Connect to Community is a great resource for that as well. That get yourself at least on one listserv so that you can know who are your state legislators, what are they in favor of, and you can support them and let them know what kind of services and funding is needed. Just recently in the lame duck session, we were able to get another $12.5 million for services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's not enough. It's never enough. But if we don't keep asking for it, we're not going to get it. So I know that in my career of 30 years or more in this field, change happens over time, but it's not unless we advocate for it. So that's a huge piece. And then finally, your journey to success is one step at a time, kind of wrapping it all up like my slide with the, these are more resources. I wanted to get to my my happy slide, my slide of the mountain. I kind of think like, the higher you go, the better the view. But I do want people to know that this is a lot. I know it's overwhelming, but there are resources and supports available. I offer myself as a transition outreach specialist to work individually with families. I will help navigate any of the resources that I talked about on these slides to get connected, to provide support in filling out applications and getting those resources together to help set you up for success. So I went through that kind of quickly, quicker than I thought, Linda.
It's okay. I did get a couple direct questions through me, and then Barb can deal with any. If anyone has questions, please type them in the chat and we'll start going through those. Let me just go up here.
Right. There we go. I put my contact information on there.
Okay, so here's the first one. If my child, currently 17, has the children's waiver, the children's home-based waiver, how can he access the active treatment and ADLs, and how and where are those services delivered?
So if he's already receiving the home-based waiver at 17, is that what the question is?
The
How can
children's
they
waiver,
access
yes.
those services? Well, they should be accessing them now. So there should be a personal plan in place that discusses what those individuals' needs and outcomes, what you need, and be working on them. Now, I will say we are in a staffing crisis and shortage. So if you're not receiving those services because you don't have a staff person, I understand that. I know that that's an issue, but those services should be delivered right now. So I don't know if there's more about that I could answer, but that is how you access it. Now, the community day services are not going to be, my dog is jumping in here, available until you exit school. So until you take that high school diploma, whether it's at age 18 or age 22, you're not going to be eligible to participate in those day services. But so I don't know if I answered that question.
Well, if not, your email is on there and they can
You
reach
can
out
certainly,
to you.
yeah.
Here's one that's sort of similar. If you're on the children's waiver and have the all kids Medicaid, does
Yes.
that transfer automatically to traditional adult Medicaid or not?
Yeah, it's the $6,500 question. So because of the pandemic, everyone's Medicaid was just continued. So what I anticipate is that in the next few months or weeks, I mean, I don't know when, but they should be sending out notices to renew your Medicaid. And when you get that medical benefits renewal notice, you should fill that out and send it back in, and they may say, you need to reapply for adult Medicaid, or they may just transfer it. Before the pandemic, they started making those automatic. I know there was a lot of problem prior to that, and people had to apply. You shouldn't have to. They should be able to make it automatic. But the bottom line is, I don't really know. But the important thing is to look out for that medical benefits renewal notice, because that is the thing that will put you into the right category. Even if they say you're too old for all kids, you need to apply for adult, they would send you a notification to say you need to do that. But I'm expecting that those people will be transferred over if you fill out those forms. I hope that answers the question, but please let me know if you're not, because that's something I will help you with.
Randy did mention that for ABLE accounts now in 2023, you can contribute up to 17,000. They raised it 1,000 this year. And I wanted to mention too that there's the able to work piece. If your child is working and they are not participating in a retirement program through their employer, I think you can contribute like $12,000, $13,000 in addition to that 17,000. So if you're working, that's another great way to raise your deposits on that. I had one more that came to me. Give me 1 second. Okay. For SSDI, does the disabled adult child have to be considered disabled by Social Security prior to collecting SSDI on a retired parent's record? I would think yes.
I would say yes. I mean, the idea is that as a beneficiary, the disability occurred before the age of 18. That's why they would be a disabled adult child. So if they were not receiving it, you would at least have to prove that they had that disability before the age. So if you have documentation that shows that, you should be able to, but the key is to show that documentation of the disability prior to turning 18.
Okay, Barb, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Okay. Debbie says, very helpful, Michelle. Can you speak about the challenges with special rec? Whoops. hold on, popped up, with special rec programs they're very limited and not accessible to people with certain challenges, especially social behavior issues. Any advice?
So my advice is I understand. I understand that and even in the adult day programs, we're having huge challenges just with the staffing shortage. So I think it's even a greater challenge than in the past in some ways. This is when I think I have to put on my advocacy hat and talk to the legislators and let them know what the problem is. Because again, the funding that we got, I mean, it's great. It's moving in the right direction, but it's still not enough. And being able to support people safely in their communities and accessing services, we just need the human bodies and the resources to be able to do that. Because I think most providers in this field really want to provide services to everybody. It's not because we don't want to, it's just we have to do it in, a way that's safely. So it's not a good answer for you, I'm sorry. But if you have more specific information that you want to share, offline, that I'm certainly happy to help you problem solve with what the situation is.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Actually, so Barb, can I just jump in for a minute to build on what Michelle said? And Clearbrook actually is moving in the right direction here, where you've established this advocacy network and made it super easy for parents to get involved just by going on Clearbrook's website and hitting the little put me on your email list. It's a very easy way for parents who are maybe not sure about how to get involved in the advocacy process. Clearbrook has employed an individual, Joe, he's amazing. He does all the legwork. He meets with the legislators, he reads the bills, he holds video conferences where he explains what's going on, what's the funding, and what he's asking people to do. And what the piece that he's missing is people's stories, people's testimonials, people's personal descriptions of their struggles. And we as parents, we deal with this all the time. We vent to each other, us moms, we try to, become a tribe, and we all know what we struggle with, but getting people outside of our circle to understand that is so important. And I've gotten involved over the past year, and it really is amazing. You think it doesn't do much good, like to share your story with the world, but the amount of movement we've made in the past year, it's not enough, but it's helpful and it's forward progress. It's getting higher up the mountain that Michelle had there. So I would just encourage anybody who struggles with not being able to fit easily into the system, right? If you have a young adult who maybe is a bit more challenging, the more we can do to show sort of the people outside of our circle what we're struggling with, I do think people, it will get attention and it will help.
It really is a civil rights issue, right? It's like full community inclusion and access, and it's been a battle for years. But thank you for sharing that, Colleen. It's helpful. What else do we have, Barb?
Yeah, we have a person asking to unmute to add to this conversation. There we go. I think yeah, go ahead.
Speaking to the special rec availability, if you have behaviors, I don't know if whoever asked is part of the NWSRA boundaries, but NWSRA does have one-on-one programming available, and I think it's for the purpose of people, individuals who aren't quite ready to participate in a full group. So I don't know if that could be available to that person, just as and I think sometimes in certain situations NWSRA will accept you outside of their community boundaries as well. So just a thought.
Okay, thank you. All right, Richard asks, daughter turns 22 soon, but is attending school through the end of the year after 2021 law change. We don't have to worry about yellow bus stopping on 22nd birthday, do we?
No, it will continue through the end of the school year.
Okay, next question. Are there any other benefits impacted if your child moves from SSI benefits to SSDI benefits of the parent?
So, it depends. Okay, so only it depends on what their earning potential is. So that's always going to be a factor. So if you get Social Security disability income from the parent and you're employed, there are still those asset limitations or that substantial gainful activity. So I don't know if that answers the question, but there's Medicaid income requirements as well. So it's great to get that the SSDI really is just coming out of a different pot to the Social Security money allotment. Like there's the SSI, which is really, you know, our taxpayers, a portion of that goes to the SSI pot, and then another SSDI is what we've paid into here, or an individual is paid into, and then that comes back, you know, as a benefit. So, but the same benefits and limitations still hold true. Does that answer your question?
I had one other one, and you touched on it a little bit, but can you address the DSP shortage and that impact on day programming?
I can address that by saying it makes me cry. It really does. I mean, I've been in this field for a very long time, like I said, and I've seen staff shortages, but it's as bad as it's ever been. So, we are doing some things at Clearbrook to incentivize staff and so we're trying to do what we can to help address the need, and we're being as creative as we can. I don't know what you do to replace human beings. I mean, that's the thing. When Joe Sullivan, our legislative kind of guru, put out the query, what are 3 things that you want, you know, legislators to do? I said, one thing that would help our families a lot is, this is kind of an aside, but there are only 9 states, I think, in the country that do not automatically give Medicaid when you apply for SSI and you're eligible for that. So that's one hoop that we could get out of the way if we could just make that a thing in Illinois. The other thing is, I'm gonna lose my train of thought. Oh, so, you know, we have these, immigration is such a problem. There are people who want to work, and there possibly are jobs there that people would do if we could allow them to work. So there's got to be some solutions here that we can address this issue with. But I don't have an easy answer for you, because it is a problem, and we're all struggling with it. So we're just going to keep working on it and thinking creatively, and let me know if you want to sit down and think about what could we be doing that we're not doing now, because I know it's a problem.
Yeah, because you can have the funding, but if you don't have the bodies, you're not getting that break. It's not helpful to the loved one. Yeah. Colleen, thank you so much for including Joe O'Sullivan's contact info, his email address and his phone number. So families, please do contact him and go to the Clearbrook website. You can find that advocacy link there and get signed up. And like Colleen said, it's super easy. And the reason we got 12.5 million is because families and providers contacted legislators. It's not because they just decided, it's because people spoke up. So it doesn't matter if you're just sending that the basic letter and you just hit
Generic.
submit,
Mhm.
the generic letter. It's the numbers, it's the people. That's the stuff they need to see. And that's how we got 12.5 million. Imagine if all of us just sent that one submit. Might we have gotten more? But hey, all we could do is click, submit, get involved. If you don't have time to tell your story, of course, we're all so tired and maxed out and managing multiple things, juggling so much. If you don't have time to tell your story, tell someone who can tell it for you. Or just hit click, just hit click. That's the big difference. So, like you said, Michelle, when you want, how do you eat a whale, right? One bite at a time. Okay,
Mhm.
well, that's all we have to do.
Right,
Just keep
right.
moving forward.
Jennifer Gong Gershowitz is my rep, and she actually came out to my church and did a presentation was it before COVID? Maybe it was right when we opened up. It's been a couple years, but and I zoomed to her right afterward. I went up and got in her face and just thanked her for all of her support and all of that. And she said, we need to hear more when we're doing things right, because we hear the loudest of some of the negative stuff, and we need to hear about the positive stuff too. And I'm like, oh, you're right, because we need to let them know when we are happy what they're doing, because sometimes when they're doing what we're doing, we're silent, right? No, they need to hear that even more, because then they'll listen to the loudest voices. So we need to be the loudest voices all the time and thank them for their support and just keep it up and just keep going with it. So that's my soapbox today.
Awesome. And the last question we have is, does Clearbrook offer customized employment services through DRS?
I'm going to say no right now, but I think we're working on it. We've got some things bubbling up, and I'm going to have to take that back to my boss and find out if that's exactly something we're doing. I don't think so right now, but I think we're working on it.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that, because I'm going to put a bug in someone's ear.
So one thing, Barb, I wanted to just build on what you just said, because one of the things I learned when I joined the Clearbrook Advocacy Committee is that, and I didn't know this, the way that the legislators sort of track what people are interested in, when you get those things that say, please click and inform your legislator, and really they do make it so easy for parents. All you have to do is click on the button. You don't have to personalize it. You don't have to tell your story. You just have to click on the button. But then what happens on the other side, the legislators, they track how many ticks they get. They don't track who they come from, right? So that's the other thing. It's not like voting where you can't do it more than once. It's sort of like knocking. You just keep knocking, and you can do it every day. And they don't know that Colleen Getz hit that button every day for 2 weeks during the campaign. They just know that it got hit 14 times in 14 days. And that was an eye opener for me, because I didn't want to be like that, illegal voter or whatever. It's nothing like that. And then the second thing I'll say is it helps, because I did find out who my representative was, Mr. Walker. And when he voted no last year on the legislation that was up, I contacted him and I told him I was very upset that he voted no. And I sent him a picture of my daughter and I explained to him what our struggles were. And then last week at the lame duck session, he voted yes on the 12.5 million. So yesterday I sent him a thank you email. I know he's not, renewing his term next year, but I still sent him a thank you note saying, thank you for voting yes. I'm glad you heard us. And I just can't stress enough. Like it was a win for me, because I got the first email back from him saying, oh, I'm sorry you're struggling, but we can't do everything. And then last week he voted yes. So you got to keep at it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colleen. That is just really validating, and it's good for us to know this. And it was not too hard, right? You thanked him and you told him where he missed the mark and why, and sending a picture of our kids is pretty easy if we're up to it, right? So that's great. Yeah. Linda and I, a couple of years ago, we met with Peter Roscom, and we were telling our story, and we're quoting all the statistics nationally in Illinois. And he said, stop. And he said, tell me your stories. And Linda and I told our personal stories. He said, that's what we need to hear. That's what you need to tell. And we were like, oh, here we thought we had to know all the numbers. No, we just need to talk about our loved ones and our situation. And it was powerful, and it was validating for us to hear that. Sometimes you think, you feel a little invisible. You're not sure people want to hear your story. So very, very important information. Thank you all. Okay, I think that wraps us up, wraps it all up for today. Thank you all very much. Michelle, thank you so much. Your dedication, your commitment, your communication, and your advocacy.
It's my pleasure. And I hope if you do have other questions, you contact me anytime now or, in the future, because I'm available. I'm around the corner. So
thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for attending. Take care.
great. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.